I turned my itty-bitty side hustle decorating for people's events into a multi-million-dollar events company. And I was able to do this without any investors and frankly without knowing what the heck I was doing. I certainly didn't have any connections or anybody giving me a roadmap of what I should do. And I want to reveal my journey and what I did get from itty-bitty company to a multi-million-dollar events business so other event professionals can learn and accomplish whatever they want to accomplish in the event space without having to go through the decade of suck and misery and turmoil and stupid decisions that I had to go through. Welcome to the Event Secrets Podcast, where we talk about how to throw better events, take better care of our clients, and make a whole lot more money in the process. This is an all-action, no-fluff podcast with actionable insights that you can follow, created specifically for event professionals. My name is Keenan Price, and I am the founder and CEO of Balloon Artisan, which, like I said, started as an itty-bitty side hustle, and I've since been able to turn it into a multi-million-dollar events company. And I want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am today. Right here, we have a graph. The y-axis is money, the x-axis are years. Now, when I first got started, I was a pretty creative artist. I was pretty good just right out the gates of what I did, right? But my first year, I ended up making like almost no money. It was clear down here. Second year, didn't really make much money, got a lot better at the craft. Third year, a little teeny bit more. Fourth year, by this point in time, I was a really talented balloon artist, one of the best in the world. Very good at what I did. Fifth year, I was still making almost no money at all. So if we draw a line connecting all these, it tells kind of a sad story, right? Really hard to make money on this. Now, something really interesting happened, though, between my fifth and sixth year. So there's my sixth year right here. And what that was, I didn't get any better at my craft. I was just as good at the end of my sixth year as I was at the end of my fifth year when it came to balloon art. But I started to learn some really important lessons. And that was, you can only get so good as an event professional just perfecting your craft. You have to learn the business side of things, the business systems. You have to learn how to sell your time or to communicate your value in the market. And this right here was a massive jump. What was it, like a six-fold jump in revenue in 1 year, right? So that's pretty cool. The next year, I ended up right around here. The year after that, I actually went down quite a bit. That was COVID. That sucked. So for all my homies in the event space during that time, that was not a year we want to relive. Bad stuff. Now, during COVID, I was really depressed, really sad because everything I had worked so hard to build had came collapsing down. Matter of fact, instead of being here, we were on track to be clear up here, around $400,000 in revenue, out of which I was going to personally pocket around $225,000 of that. So this was going to be a really big year for us. Then COVID came, reared its ugly head, and then everything came crashing down. It was really sad. We did the pandemic thing for a year, and once the pandemic was over, my clients started coming back. And I was able to almost get back up to where I was the year before the pandemic, which was pretty cool. But I was pretty burned out at the time. And I didn't want to continue in business the way that I had been doing because, you know what, this was really freaking hard. Like these days were really, really hard. These days were like really, really, really hard though. Even though I was making some good money every year here, besides this one obviously, I was personally pocketing over $100,000, between $100,000 to $120,000, what I was taking home from doing this. And it was kind of like the Keenan show. It was kind of a one-man thing, right? Well, in year 10, I ended up getting a little bit higher, not quite to where my peak was. Now, this is where things got interesting, right? I had kind of a moment where I had to step back and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? And I was able to change quite a bit. Because in the end of my 11th year, I ended up clear up here. This was last year, so 2023. We're now nearing the end of 2024, and our revenue is not here. It's not here. It's not here. It's actually clear off the chart, pretty much to the ceiling of this room. So we about 3x'd our revenue from last year, and in the process, I a lot more than 3x'd my profit as the owner of the business, right? So anyways, this is a little bit about my trajectory. It took me a long time to get there, but this is kind of where we're at. Here, I'll show that indicating onward and upward trend. But this is a little bit about my story. Now, in order to get from way down here to clear up here, there were 3 challenges that I had to solve, or 3 lessons that I had to learn to make that jump. The event professional's death trap is something I discovered in this time period right here. And what happens when we're looking at this chart here, everything looks relatively flat and smooth, but really if you zoom in from like a month-to-month breakdown, what you see is it's more like this, right? It's like some months, like lots of sales, other months, nothing, right? Slow season, peaks and valleys, feast and famine, all that stuff, right? That's really what's going on here if you were to explode this view out a little bit more and see the detailed like month-to-month breakdown. But what I ended up discovering is to go from here to here, I had to master business systems. I had to learn how to promote myself, get my name out there. I was just as good of an artist here as I was here. The only difference is nobody knew who I was here, and here I figured out how to get the word out, right? So people started hiring me and paying me lots of money, and I started getting better projects and better events and better clients, things like that. It was really cool. Now, the way I did that is I took my images and my client work from these earlier years, and I combined them into a printed brochure. And then I just simply took that brochure out and visited as many businesses as I could, and I found out that every time I gave out 4 brochures, one of those companies would end up working with me. And so for this period right here where I was just getting ramped up, that's what I did. Every day I'd go out and I'd meet new businesses and I'd meet event planners and I'd give them my brochures. Well, what happened is it started working. Before I knew it, my schedule was completely full with balloon projects. And because it was just me, myself, and I now had to go build all these balloon projects. And because I was busy executing on these balloon projects that I had sold, nobody was out marketing my business, which meant my pipeline dried up and I had no more sales coming in. I had no more events, no more projects. And this was a very bad thing. And that's what led to the peaks and valleys in my revenue. And so what I found is I'd go out, I'd work really hard to sell the projects, I'd then fulfill those projects, no one was selling for me, then I'd have nothing, I'd take a little breather because I was burned out from all those projects, and then I'd repeat the cycle over and over and over. And this is what I call the death trap, because you're so busy in this process of sell, fulfill, sell, fulfill, sell, fulfill, sell, fulfill, you can never actually get ahead as a business. So I struggled for this for years. Nobody told me what was going on. It wasn't until I had a lot of thinking time and a lot of I hate doing this time that I finally figured out something needed to change. So I was able to go from here to here, which was a 3 times revenue jump in 1 year, over 3 times. It was really cool, and it absolutely changed my life as an event professional. So that was the first main obstacle I had to overcome to see a lot of growth in my career as an event professional. I had to get out of this death trap. I had to learn how to stand out. Now, this was pretty interesting. So once again, 2020 right here. Boo. Before 2020, there were 5 main competitors in the balloon decorating space. I thought all of them would go under, except for my team and I. I figured we'd get through the pandemic just fine, reboot everything, maybe go into hibernation mode, but then we'd dominate the marketplace after. What really happened is we went from 5 competitors to 70, which made no sense to me because I'm like, wait, pandemic, no events, everyone's afraid to get sick. Why the heck are there 12 times more balloon decorating companies than what there were before the pandemic? It just made no sense to me. And what I figured out is that most of these 70 balloon companies were just doing this part-time. And they didn't really have a lot of ambitions to grow. It was just extra income for them. It was fun. It was something cool that they could do. And it made it really, really rough to compete with because they didn't know how to run profitable businesses. They didn't know how to charge and how to bid competitively. So for example, I had a corporate client I worked with for years before the pandemic. They asked me to bid a project. I bid $3,500. They gave the contract to a balloon artist that bid $700. Now, I can tell you the material cost for that project was probably $500 itself. Then you had all the planning time, all the logistics, the travel, renting the box truck, driving there, gas and all that stuff for, $200 from them? And so I found it really difficult to stand out and to compete. And so I started losing all of my projects and I was getting really, really upset by that. And I had to do a lot more thinking. And I started thinking, okay, I'm never going to be able to beat these people on price. That's just the honest reality. Now, to a degree, I can beat them on quality. But the unfortunate thing about the event space is there comes a time when people are like, good enough, right? I'll go with this person, they're half the price or whatever. It's good enough. It might not be the best, but it's good enough. And so I go, okay, I can't compete on price. I probably can't really compete on quality because your average person, your average client isn't going to know the difference between a 10 out of 10 balloon installation and a like 8 out of 10, right? And so that became really difficult for me. So I had to take a step back and be like, okay, but what can they not compete on? And it turned out it was the quality of service. Because this was my full-time gig. And I had the capacity to manage a full-time team and to grow a full-time team where most of my competitors were doing this on the weekends. And so what happened is my competitors, they would get an inquiry through social media and it'd take them 2 or 3 days to respond. Meanwhile, my team and I, we're over here responding in 10 to 15 minutes. We pick up our phone. We'll meet with you on Zoom. We'll send over inspiration ideas. We'll send over renderings. We'll do all these high-touch, high-ticket service offerings that our competitors just weren't willing to do. And so the way that I stood out is by saying, hey, look how awesome we are. Yes, we make cool stuff, but the customer experience that you will have working with Balloon Artisan is phenomenal. You will not find anybody else that can even compete with that. And we found that by bringing that up in all of our marketing, in all of our sales, in all of our emails, we were able to go from down here to clear up here. And that was life-changing. So we loved this, we did more of it, and that eventually took us to clear up here in the following year, right? We 3x'd our revenue again the next year. And we only needed to hire like 2 more team members to do that. So it was really cool. This message of better customer experience, better results. We've been doing this for a decade instead of 2 years. It's not just us. We got a whole team that can support you. That really resonated with the marketplace. And so we were able to stand out. The third lesson that I had to learn is this concept of leverage, which is just simply how much effort do I need to put into something relative to how many results I get out? Or more simply put, how to multiply yourself. How to multiply your efforts and what you can do. Now, there's a lot of ways we can do this, and this could be its own 10 podcast, honestly. We can do this by hiring a team. We can do this by using digital systems. We can do this by finding better clients and getting bigger projects. There's a lot of ways that we can learn this concept of leverage, but I had to do that to go from here to here. Because down here, it was the Keenan Price show. Around here, I had a little more leverage. I had some support help. So it was pretty much the Keenan show with some helpers that came along for the ride and helped inflate balloons and stuff like that. It was actually really interesting. Right here, I was traveling around the country working with some of the world's biggest brands on some really exciting events. One of my favorite events that we did was for Instagram, where we helped them launch Instagram TV, which was what came before Instagram Reels. That was kind of what spurred TikTok off and all that stuff. So we were there for the grand opening at VidCon in Anaheim, California for that, and they paid us quite a bit of money to do that, right? Very cool. We're working with Adobe and JetBlue and Procter & Gamble and A&E and lots of other really cool companies. It was a really cool time. The difference between here and here is I had to let go of that creative control, and I had to train and hire other balloon artists and trust that they do as good of a job as me. That was the big thing. And then I had to bring in my own team, and I had to teach them how to be phenomenal event planners and learn everything that I learned in just a couple of months. So they could provide leverage to the system and help me to duplicate what I have learned, right? So that's kind of the journey of Balloon Artisan. So of course, these 3 things, there's a lot to them, but these 3 things are pretty much the premise of the Event Secrets podcast. If you think that these insights and learning this stuff can be helpful to you in your career as an event professional, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever your preferred podcasting platform is. And you can also connect with me directly on LinkedIn. Once again, my name's Keenan Price. I'm the CEO of Balloon Artisan. Shoot me a message. Always happy to connect with other event professionals, and we'll see you in the next episode.